beautiful people, and welcome to Just Bloom with Kiki Orr.
Episode number 8. I am so excited. It's February, it's Black History Month, it's my birthday month, 227, not the show, that is my actual birthday, and I will be making my 48th rotation around the sun. And yes, I'm going to say it again because it's worth repeating. Black History Month, everybody. Black History Month. I am really excited about this particular episode. I want to welcome my guest. She's Najha Zigbi-Johnson, Master Theological Studies candidate in African and African American Studies. She's graduating in May 2020 from Harvard Divinity School. Woo! We're going to give it up for Najha, everybody. So welcome, Najha. Say hello to the beautiful people, Najha.
Hi, beautiful people. Thank you for having me, Keisha. I'm blessed by this. Thank you.
I am so honored to be able to have you. It's so very exciting. First of all, congratulations on your upcoming graduation. I could hardly believe that the time has just in a few more months you're going to be graduating. How excited are you?
I'm so excited. I'm nervous, but I feel good. Mm-hmm. I'm ready to get this diploma. I'm ready to be done and kind of start being an adult, maybe. That's what it feels like.
Well, what you mentioned that you were nervous. What are some of the things or one thing that you were nervous about?
Ooh, that's a kind of deep question. I'm nervous about a couple
okay, well, let's
things.
get
I'm
deep.
more excited than nervous, but I think as a student, and this is a conversation a lot of my friends and I have, a lot of our self-worth and identity is wrapped up in being a student and what we produce as scholars and being good students. And I'm 25, and basically my whole life I've been a student. And this is going to be the first time in my life where I'm not in a classroom, which is in many ways where I feel most comfortable, and I'm not writing academic papers, or even not academic papers, but just writing. And so I'm going to have to flex new muscles and learn new skills. And so I'm really excited for that, but it's also very new because I've always been a student. And so it's a very different experience to kind of leave this cocoon and this bubble. And I got to look for a job. I got to make some coin.
Some ching, yes.
Exactly.
Time to get out there in the real world, make that money. That's money, honey. Okay. You've already mentioned that you're 25 years old, and I think that that's important for a couple of reasons. Well, from the Just Bloom perspective, I really try not to kind of break this thing about age, right? Sometimes we think we're too old to be doing certain things, or people think that people are too young, et cetera. So I want to kind of get out of that mindset and just saying that you can start where you are no matter what, what your age is.
Yes.
But being 25 and being, a millennial, I think your blossoming story is so very special in the sense that you started the Freedom School, which is a seminar on theory and practice for Black studies in the United States.
Yes.
Right? And so,
yes. I just came from our first meeting this semester.
Was that tonight? Was the first meeting this semester?
Yay!
So perfect. This is great. So with that being said, and when we talk about blossoming, talk to the people a little bit about how this, how you began to create this. What is the blossoming story? Did it come out of a need, out of a lack? What was the premise for you starting the school?
And there's so much to say about Freedom School. Well, it started for a couple of reasons, really so many reasons, actually. There's so many different veins to this story, and I want to be able to kind of highlight them all. So like I said, or like you mentioned, I study African-American culture as a graduate student, and even at the most well-resourced institution literally in the world, we're still lacking in the African-American Studies department. There still aren't the classes that I feel I deserve and I need in order to do the work I want to do and that I deserve to do. And that's specifically thinking about this contemporary moment that we're in and thinking about the organizing work that's happening, the cultural production that's happening, and what does it mean to be Black What does it mean to create Blackness? And how are we responding to, moving through, thinking about this kind of crazy political moment that we're in? And there's so many unknowns in terms of like environmental justice and sustainability and global warming, so many unknowns around this crazy president that we have, like impending war, and what I call like the afterlife of slavery, that it's still the slavery's afterlife is still so present even today in 2020 for me. And how do I move through this? And I didn't feel that my school had what I needed. And a lot of Black professors were leaving. And I was like, all right, so I got to Harvard, and I still don't have what I need. What do I do? So that was one of the things I thought about, and it was created kind of as a way to fill both an intellectual gap that I felt I had and also a gap in leadership from Black professors who I wanted to look to as mentors and as scholars. And then another thing I was thinking about was, what is my role and responsibility as someone from Harlem, from the Bronx and Harlem, who is now at a school with $40 billion in a city that's still dealing with homelessness, that's reeling from this opioid crisis that acutely affects issues around gentrification in the prison system. Harvard has over $500 million invested in the private prison system, which is insane. And it's like, what is our responsibility as students and also as stewards who are going to inherit this world? And what does it mean to have all of these resources? And is it possible to redistribute the resources we have to folks outside of our school? And what does it mean to rethink how scholarship and academia is done? Because I feel like it's really played out. I feel like listening to a lecture is played out. I feel like just reading scholarship that's not accessible and that's not written by the people is played out. And so I wanted to think about, like, how can I rethink this? And I had the chance to do a similar class in undergrad, and it was a bit different, but it kind of gave me the confidence. And I also thought about, what does it mean to have organized in North Carolina, where I went to college, and learn from Southerners and, you know, feel rooted in the civil rights movement and history. And so Freedom Schools were originally founded by a SNCC organizer, Southern Nonviolent Christian, or Southern Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, excuse me. That's what SNCC stands for. And it was founded in 1963 as a way to teach middle schoolers and high schoolers about the civil rights movement and the economic, political, and racial history that really undergirds the civil rights movement, and as a way to mobilize and to radicalize young people to be agents of change. And so there's this long history of Freedom Schools, and it morphed into teaching folks about voter registration and voter rights in Mississippi. And it has this really incredible history, and there's all of these iterations of Freedom Schools that take place. And so I feel very much grounded in this history and lineage of Southern movement building and organizing, rooted in the civil rights movement. And I wanted to bring that energy and that urgency around equity and justice work to my experience at Harvard, and also to offer other Black folks, in particular Black women, to be very, very specific, a space that we can co-own and co-create. Because oftentimes white folks get that here, but Black folks end up leaving tired. We feel used, and we kind of feel like we were bamboozled. And I didn't want to feel like that. I was like, I have 2 years in this place. I was like, I want to create something. I want to have ownership over something. I want to be able to finesse this money, and I want to be able to do it in community with people and do it for a reason that's worthwhile. And so those are some of the reasons and some of the history behind the creation of Freedom School, which is now in its second semester, and we just had our first meeting today, and it was awesome. The class doubled in size. We're doing so much amazing work, so I'm really excited.
That is beautiful, Najha. I'm excited for you. You touched on such a number of things, and I'm just trying to think where I want to go next with this, but I think one of the things that you talked about is the things that are happening right within the surrounding areas of Harvard, right, with the gentrification and then opioid crisis and things of that. So I'd be interested to know with the Freedom School and the work that you're doing, how does this tie in to community? Because I know it's at the school, but how does the school, the academia, and then community come together? And what are some work that you're doing in relation to the community?
So we were talking about that today, and the class is open to anyone in the community. You don't have to be a student at Harvard. If you're a student, you get credit, and it helps you graduate. But if you're not, you can just come. All the books are free. We have some free meals, and so this isn't a space where you have to, like, pay money to be. And there's a lot of arbitrary laws around, like, being a student or having access to spaces at institutions like Harvard, and this is a space that's open to community. And more importantly, we're thinking about how do we learn from community organizers? How do we learn from elders? How do we incorporate this as, like, central to our mission and central to, like, what we learn and what we think about? And specifically this semester, we're really blessed to have a lot of organizers who do prison divest work and who are really heavily involved in prison abolition work, which is something I care deeply about and I want to learn more about and become more involved with. And so one of the things we're going to do this year is put on a convening for the community, for each other, for Harvard, where we get to explore various topics, learn organizing tactics, kind of feel renewed, feel like we have some direction in where we're going, and ground ourselves in what's happening in the surrounding area. And one of the things that is happening in the surrounding area, like the rest of the country, is mass incarceration. There's 1 million private prisons surrounding Harvard University, and Harvard has a lot of money wrapped up in these prisons. And so we had a really beautiful conversation about how do we lift up voices inside prison right now, because there's a lot of prisoners who are doing really critical work inside, but there's the gap between how do we connect what's happening on the outside with what's happening inside. How do we connect the resources that we have here with folks who are doing work inside prisons? And of course there's all of these kind of like barriers, because readings are heavily censored, letters are heavily censored, and so there's all of these things that are happening, but there's still so many ways we can learn from folks who have so much knowledge, who have so much direction in terms of what they think prison abolition and prison reform should look like, and they know because they're experiencing it. And so one of the things we spoke about is one of the panels should be directly on prison abolition, and there are ways to do pre-recorded voice recordings of folks in prisons. There's ways to lift up families and have them speak and pay honorariums. So I was talking to a dear friend who's one of the lead organizers on the Prison Divest campaign, and he said we paid someone who's currently incarcerated $1,000, or money can go to commissary. And this is one way that we can lift up their voice. Another idea that was talked about and that we're going to work on hopefully doing is having a radio show or doing some recordings of a radio show on prison abolition and on prison divest work, and be able to kind of like a bit illegally like push out these radio waves to folks who are inside, and they can access that and hear families who might be reading letters and be updating their family members on the inside, hear what folks are saying. And so we can kind of bridge this divide that really isn't working for a lot of people. And we have to be creative in the ways that we do it, because someone brought up, and it's so true, that folks, like, everything is online now. Podcasts are online, which is great. Readings are online, but people who are inside don't have access to the internet. And so there's such a gap in what they have and what we have. And if we have some resources and we have time to think strategically, then that's one way we can lift up a whole population of people who have been like essentially invisibilized. So that's something for us that feels really important, is how do we do this work and how do we shift our resources to folks who have been completely marginalized. We have a budget for food, and someone said, well, none of us are really going hungry. Like, what does it mean to like use this budget that we have $1,000 for food? What does it mean to like feed people in Harvard Square or feed kids or do something like that? So really thinking about redistributing the resources that we have, which really aren't a lot given that Harvard has $40 billion, and thinking about like, what does it mean to be committed to material change work? So not just thinking about scholarship and talking for the sake of talking and sounding fancy, but what is our work in service of? And is it in service of something larger than ourselves? And if so, okay, then we're doing something.
You are doing something indeed. And that sounds truly, truly amazing. And I love the thing that you just said, too, is are we doing it just for the sake of doing or sounding intelligent? And I think that when I think of social justice work, often there can be this disconnect, right? Because there are people who come from academia and there's these jargon and these terminologies and these big words that can often, with something that is meant to be inclusive, it sometimes feel very divisive because I may not have the jargon, the vocabulary, and those words that are being utilized, and so others, then there's the othering, because now I'm feeling, and I say I am kind of general, but like then we may be feeling like I want to be involved, perhaps hypothetically, in the prison reform, or I want to be involved in something, but how do I do it and feel like I am going to, one, that I get to speak and use my voice and the words and the language that I'm equipped with, and not feel isolated. So it sounds to me, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit more, but it sounds to me that that is something that the Freedom School holds, or something that you I don't know if the Freedom School holds very dear in terms of being able to bridge that gap, even in language or even in jargon talking.
Totally. That's it's always a point of tension for people in academia, and it's a point of tension for me, and it's something I always have to be mindful of, because essentially when you go to school, you're taught to speak in another language. And it's weird, like when you're in classes, the words that we use like to describe things are not words that people use in their everyday language. And so, especially being a person of color, you really have to learn a language in order to perform in schools, and it's a complete performance. And I do think that these words have meaning, and they've helped describe phenomena and ideas that maybe were harder to describe and understand, and I feel like I'm equipped with something, and so it has been a positive thing for me. But it really, it can only go so far. And so one of the things that I thought about when creating the classes, how do we expand this canon of Black radical thought? Like, people in Black studies at Harvard read the same folks over and over again. We read W.E.B. Du Bois. We read Frantz Fanon, who I haven't read, and he doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. We read, other, like, people that died a really long time ago, and, like, know a lot of really fancy theory, but it's not accessible, and I don't think it serves us well. And so our class is rooted particularly in the scholarship of Black women, and what I've found, studying Black women in particular, is that, like, we think about the everydayness of life. Like, we're concerned about how are we feeding our family, how are we feeding our babies, are we safe, do we have housing? These really basic questions that some people can explain with a lot of high theory and others explain, like, very clearly, but it doesn't mean that these Black women aren't brilliant and aren't offering new ways to think about life and new ways to think about organizing and theoretical work. But there's an accessibility that they lead with because it's grounded in reality, and it's grounded in everyday experiences of resistance, struggle, survival, and also freedom. And so for us, it's important that we're lifting up these voices, and it's important that we're lifting up community voices. And so that means not reading a theorist about prison abolition, but listening to an interview with someone inside prison. And we have a lot of choice over who we read, and it also kind of, we're affirming that these voices are critical and they're necessary, and if we don't include them, and if we don't lead with these voices, then we're not doing this work right. And so we're not reading fancy people, we're reading, like, everyday folks, we're reading queer people, and we're reading people of color. Like, we don't read white people, and we don't read a lot of men. And so that's one of the ways to shift it, but I'd admit, like, there's always a tension between that. And despite the fact that we're doing all of this work, we're still kind of in this bubble of jargon and fantasy to some degree because we're all students at Harvard.
Right. Now that you're talking about it, I actually think about it in this way, that it's probably no different than if someone, like, I used to do human resources, right? And so if I am kind of within that world and I'm talking benefits, and I'm talking recruitment, and I'm talking like, and whatever those HR kind of terms are, you will undoubtedly pick up the terminologies of where you are and what you're doing. So it's not necessarily asking. And I know that you're not saying that, and neither am I. I just think I want to just clarify that. I think what I'm saying is that I understand it. But soon enough, you will be outside of academia because you're going to be, graduating. And then when you graduate, talk a little bit about, if you will, what are some of the thoughts that you've had in terms of where you're looking to head or the type of work that you'd like to do upon graduating?
I feel like this is an important conversation for us to have because you'll have a lot of ideas and, I'll be able to bounce things off of you. But one of the things that Freedom School has kind of clarified for me and offered is that, at the end of the day, it's probably not going to be next year or the year after, but I love building spaces. I love seeing ideas to fruition. I don't think I can work a 9-to-5 for my whole life, and I really love what it means to have built a space and know that, I fundraised, I put together a budget, I led it, it was interactive, people really showed up, and then people showed up again, and I can do this convening, and this is something that I can do. And so it still feels really vague for, the long-term goal, but I really feel passionate about kind of radical education work, art, and culture, and Black people. And so whatever I do is going to sit at some intersection of those things. And I also know that in the meantime, I need to build some basic skills around being in an office. And it's the opposite of what most people do, but it's I've had time in an office, but I haven't had a lot of time. And so I'd be really happy to work at a nonprofit for a couple of years and learn some basic things. I got to wake up at 7 o'clock for my 8:30 managing financial resources for nonprofit organizations. And so maybe it'll be doing something around that or fundraising or philanthropy, but I don't think that's where I want to. I know that's not where I want to stay. And I really also love academia. I don't love the idea of being in school for another 6 years, but I sort of can't not see myself doing a PhD. And so I need space, I need time, I need to breathe and learn other parts of myself. But I really love being in the classroom. It's where I feel most whole. And I love writing. I love thinking. I feel like I have a lot to offer. And so part of me wonders if I'll go back to school. And actually my program that I'm in is a doctoral track program, but I'm not doing that. And so it's just crazy because, and then this is not even your question really, but this is kind of a reflection of where I am right now. But that, I would love to do a PhD right now in so many ways. It's just not sustainable. I feel like these programs are not designed for Black women to thrive and be healthy and not have depression. And I want to thrive. I don't want to have depression. I want to have money to travel. I don't want to be, sitting here writing 7 days a week feeling isolated and far away from my family and friends. It's heartbreak for me in so many ways because I want to do a PhD. I have the resources to do it. I'm able to do it, but it's just I can't compromise my mental health anymore. And so part of that for me means being able to just have a job and be able to pay my rent, because also folks in these programs, even at freaking fancy schools like Harvard, get paid $38,000 a year to be a PhD. I'm so confused. I can't live in Cambridge with $38,000. That was a little bit of a tangent. So I'm wrestling with what I want to do because there's so many things I want to do, and some of them are possible, some of them are going to take time. And I'm figuring it out. I really am. And I really.
I was going to say you don't have to have the answer. You don't have to have the answer, all of the answers right now. But it sounds like you have a good baseline, right? You're very clear on what you're passionate about and what you're good at, and however that formulates is what it will be. And life is not linear, so you may take many different paths. Something that actually struck me though, because you said, I feel like you said, I know that I, will need to kind of go into the office, get that world experience, and something you said around that had me think, I can't remember the exact words, but the thought that came to my mind was, or not. Like, that does not have to be the way. We don't necessarily have to take the traditional route with all of the skill set that you currently have and the building and the planning and the structuring. And also, what's so advantageous for you, too, is that you have a beautiful family and your mom who has done the work in terms of, like, nonprofit work and working in the food industry, like all of that. So you have that that knowledge at your disposal, so we can pull from those resources, and you could very well just start your own business. You could literally just do that. I don't like to fantasize over things, but I just like to leave things open to the possibilities, that it does not have to be that I'm jumping from school to right into an office work and getting stuff specifically if that's not where you want to be. You get to create that. So, as you said, we can talk more about that. But that's my take on that.
And I need that encouragement. I really do. I really need that type of encouragement.
You got it, girl.
Oh.
Woman. So you actually, there's something else I want to talk a little bit about. I said at the top, because I can't say it enough, is Black History Month. And get your thoughts on some pop culture, right? This pop culture and social justice. Wait, but pop culture and social justice. So I want to get your take on these two particular people and what happens. What do you think about when this comes to mind? And it's so funny. Well, not funny, but interesting that you brought up our prison reform and all the work that you're doing, because I actually wrote this down as it relates to pop culture. I wanted to know what your thought was about Kim Kardashian.
I knew it.
And prison reform. And I didn't know that you were going to necessarily talk about prison reform in this conversation.
Funny.
So I think it's so funny that is the case. So now,
that is so funny. Look, the stars align. Kimberly Noel Kardashian. What do I have to say about my good sis? I think my first thought, and maybe this is because I'm a Divinity school student, so I think about all these big questions, is I can imagine that getting to a point where you're so famous and life feels so probably weird and random, and you don't even know how to relate to people anymore. I can really imagine that she got to a point where she was like, all right, this fame shit is cute. I have my show, I have my husband, but this isn't it, because it's you want. And at a certain point, you're I need to do something. And so I do imagine that, at a very real level, her desire to be a part of prison reform work comes from, a really altruistic place and wanting to, realizing that fame and beauty and whatever isn't enough. And so I think that her efforts are, valiant, I think. And I think I'm in a place where I don't have energy to really criticize her, to be honest. And I think it's easy for a lot of movement folks to kind of be holier than thou. And there's so many ways I could do that. And I think it's so weird how the whole Kardashian clan is obsessed with blackness and black men, and they appropriate black people and black women in particular. And I think that Kim, no less than any of her other sisters, does that and is she needs to. She won't be held accountable because she doesn't care. And so it's a weird thing because she wears cornrows. She doesn't listen to black women, but she will get a black grandma out of prison. But I also think that sometimes folks need to get in where they fit in, and work looks different. But this is such a critical time that I don't think we have the choice to say this person gets to do this and this person doesn't. Kim Kardashian does her work, good. Do I think at the end of the day she needs to be getting bigged up as much as she does? Absolutely not, because there's so many other people who are doing this work, who've been doing this work, who don't have the resources that she does, and are doing much more. And so we should be looking to them, and she should be amplifying those voices, which I don't think she really is doing so much. But she's doing something important, and everyone's effort need to be in that direction. And so that's my initial feeling now is good. She should be doing this. Should she be doing more? Yes. But she's doing something. And so, I don't really feel inclined in this moment to criticize her, because that's just energy that I don't feel like putting out into this universe.
Come on now. Ready for the next one? The next person?
Okay, hit me with it. Let's
see. All right. So the Super Bowl just happened. Jay-Z is working with the Super Bowl, with the NFL, I should say, with the NFL. And then, off the back of, I shouldn't say off the back, I don't mean to say off the back of, but, we had Kaepernick and all of that stuff. Any thoughts on Jay-Z and partnering with the NFL, or is football, sports really
I don't really, honestly, to be honest, I don't know what's happening. That whole thing,
fair enough.
It's gone over my head.
As I said it, I was like,
I don't know.
I was like, wait, we're talking sports. I don't know if okay, fair enough.
But I will say that I am a low-ranking member of the Beehive, so I love Beyonce. That's what I have to say about Jay-Z and the Super Bowl.
Okay, awesome. We'll leave it at that. I was thinking of another person, but it's still under the line of prison reform, and I don't know that you watch Love and Hip Hop, but Yandy Smith.
This is a question for my dad.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, but Yandy, yeah, I know.
I don't know. I'm at Divinity school. I
think we did well with Kim. I think we did well with Kim Kardashian. We're good on that. We'll leave it at that. Let's talk a little bit about. We'll get into the movie a bit. A movie, not so much about the movie per se. I want to share with the people what many would call a think piece. I hope I used that right terminology. For voyagesjournal.com. on Afrorealism, and the absurd, making sense of love, life, and death in Queen and Slim. So I thought that was very brilliantly done. I read it. I thoroughly enjoyed that. But what I want to specifically talk to you about in relation, or maybe it's in relation to that, is about legacy. And so, I'm going to back up a little bit more and say that I saw something that you posted recently on your Facebook, and it was the Google ad where it was highlighting, Black folks, and it was a beautiful ad. So if you guys haven't seen it, it was a beautiful ad for Black History Month that Google did, and you were like, amazing. And then you said, I just want to make my people proud. So have you think about kind of legacy, what does that mean, and what did you mean about make the people proud? And you can tie all of that into either, because I started talking about the think piece, you can tie all that together, or you can have it take on different legs, but if you will. So I said a lot, but I'm going to just release it now and let you have at it.
Wow. These are such good questions, and I really appreciate you reading my piece. That was only the second thing I published online ever, so that was exciting. So I appreciate you reading that. Maybe I'll go first to the legacy piece. And again, wow, religion really has being a student of religions and specifically spirituality in the diaspora is what moves me most. And so I think a lot about ancestors. And I think about my ancestors, our collective ancestors, and what it means to come from, such an incredible and great lineage. And so I constantly think of myself as legacy, part of a great legacy of people who persisted, probably died early, probably didn't get everything did not get everything they deserved in life, but still loved. We're still genius, still found joy, and led such complex and beautiful and dynamic lives. And so, and it's evident in that Google thing where you see the most searched woman is a Black woman, the most undefeated athlete is a Black person. These people, the women who did NASA work are Black women, and it's just Black folks create culture. We're genius, and I really do feel that not just to toot my own horn, but especially at Harvard, it's I had a little bit of imposter syndrome coming in here. I was what's this mess about? Am I going to be able to speak in these classrooms? Black folks, Black women are the smartest people, period, that I come across in every single classroom that I'm in, without a doubt. And so it's Black people outperform everyone else everywhere. And I it's like if I come from such a legacy of people and I am legacy, then I have like, it is my duty, humbly so, to like live up to this incredible legacy of people. I think about my great-grandfather who was Liberian, and he was the traditional chief of our family's village. And that's my grandfather's job. He's in Liberia right now, and Liberia had 20 years of civil war. We had Ebola. It's like one of the poorest countries in the world, but he's doing so much, and this is my legacy. And so I have to make my people proud, and I want to make my people proud. And I really feel that, like, in this life that I get to lead, which is full of blessings and joy, and also is really hard and is really scary because there's so many unknowns, especially as a millennial, I say this, that we're inheriting a world that I can't fully, like, conceive of even today, that it's my duty to, like, to make my people proud and to know that both, like, my ancestors can smile knowing that I'm doing this work and that I have like Black folk front and center, and that also like X amount of generations from me in the future are going to be like, yes, like my great grandma, she cared about my life and she wanted to do something to make sure that I could breathe a little easier. And so I think about the past, and I also think about the future, and that if I get to like journey on this earth, and I'm really thinking about that with the recent passing of Kobe and Gianna and everyone else on that tragic flight, you know, like we're here for a second. We get to journey on earth for a couple moments, really, in the grand scheme of things. And like we don't have a lot of time, but the time that we have is so precious, and there's so much that we can do. And like being able to converse in this sort of conversation and like feeling gratitude and reflecting on where I am and what I want to do and who I hope to be is so important, because like I want to make my ancestors proud. Like that's what's most important to me. Like I want them to like, I believe that they're here with us, and I believe that like they know what's happening and that I can look to them for guidance. And for me, that's really important as someone that studies African religions and spirituality. And I believe that like I will have that same impact, if I so choose, on my future generations, and that I care about those people more so than I care about myself. And so for me, that's what legacy is. And that was the last line in Queen and Slim. Queen says, "Can I be your legacy?" And then Slim says, "You already are." And I thought that was such a profound moment in the movie, which was really complicated, and I have a lot of feelings on it. So yeah, I wrote a little bit about legacy in terms of Queen and Slim, but in my own life, I think about everyone that came before me, and also folks that are still alive. Like I get to learn from you. Like you're an elder in my life, you're a mother figure in my life, and so this is a legacy that I'm carrying on also in terms of like people that are still, you know, that are here and that I get to learn from and talk with on an everyday basis.
Amen to that.
Any parting words?
It's Black History Month, and that means we have to trust Black women and listen to Black women and listen to Black femmes, because I think that we have a lot to share. And I mean, really always, that if there's a time to remind one another, this is the time. And so much amazing work is happening, and there's so many ways to get plugged in and build yourself and like listen to what your grandma is saying, what your auntie is saying, what your pastor is saying, and whoever else is in your community. But I think specifically Black women have so many gems. Like I'm just grateful to get to listen to you and love your family, and yeah, we got to do that Black History Month every day.
Beautifully said. I think that's just a powerful end to the conversation about what is it that you get to create, or what is it that you're looking to create, and specifically, again, as we celebrate Black History Month.
Yes,
Najha
29 days this year, too. We have 29 days.
I know, we have a leap year. It's a leap year. We get an extra day. But, you know, Najha Zigbi-Johnson is doing the work, and I am so very, very proud of you. I am so honored to know you in the way that I do know you, and continue to honor to watch and bear witness to the work that you have done and will continue to do. So thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for the work and the lives that I know will be changed as they get to come in contact with you. and the work that you're doing, which I know is bigger than you. As you've already stated, you are a change maker, an agent of change. And I just want to highlight that to folks and let them know that if anyone ever doubted that someone at 25 years old could be that, here is a living example right here in our community of Harlem, New York. So here we are, and you can do that at any age and at any time. So you can just bloom right from where you are.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Najha. I really, really appreciate you.